The National Desk, America's News, now.
Another night of expected severe storms sets the table for much worse weather over the weekend across the country.
The TSA checkout or check-in line was insane.
A record-breaking Memorial Day weekend travel day and the delays that come along with it, just how backed up our airports will be today. And then 40 million Americans suffering from hearing loss, the new worrying effect that untreated complications can cause that impacts the entire family. This is the National Desk, America's News Now. I'm Amira David. Right now, 45 million Americans at risk for severe thunderstorms across the southern plains and also parts of the Midwest. Several tornadoes have already been reported in Iowa and Illinois, with more possible there and in Wisconsin as well. Flash flooding could also happen in Arkansas, Louisiana, and Texas. Now, tomorrow, there's a moderate risk, about 4 out of 5 as rated by the National Weather Service, for severe weather over much of Kansas, Oklahoma, the western part of Missouri. Some cities at risk in Oklahoma could be Norman, Stillwater, Oklahoma City, and Tulsa. In Kansas, Dodge City, Salina, Wichita, and Kansas City, all under that threat. Damaging winds as high as 90 miles per hour likely, hail expected, possibly 4 inches in diameter. And of course, there is the possibility of strong, violent tornadoes. Meantime, a heat wave is affecting parts of the Gulf Coast, Texas, and Florida this weekend, especially South Texas, where highs are forecast to reach above 100 degrees. Record high temps forecast in Texas, Louisiana, Mississippi, and Florida. San Antonio, Houston, New Orleans, and Miami could see their hottest Memorial Day on record. There won't be much relief at night either, with temperatures expected to remain very warm. 2 Americans were among the 3 people who were shot and killed by a Haitian gang today. The married couple, Davy and Natalie Lloyd, were working as missionaries. They were abducted yesterday after leaving a youth event at a local church, according to Haitian police. The 3rd person killed has not yet been identified. The news comes as President Biden yesterday said the United States military won't be handling security for the island anytime soon.
We concluded that for the United States to deploy forces in the hemisphere just raises all kinds of questions that can be easily misrepresented. So we set out to find a partner or partners who would lead that effort that we would participate in, not with American forces, but with supplies and making sure they had what they needed.
This evening, Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin is getting a medical procedure at Walter Reed National Military Medical Center, and he's temporarily transferring power to his deputy. The Pentagon press secretary said Austin is dealing with bladder problems that began in December after he was treated for prostate cancer. The Defense Department has informed the White House and Congress of the developments. A top United Nations court, the International Court of Justice, has ordered Israel to immediately halt any military operations in Rafah.
Israel must immediately halt its military offensive and any other action in the Rafah governorate which may inflict on the Palestinian group in Gaza conditions of life that could bring about its physical destruction in whole or in part.
The International Court of Justice says the humanitarian situation in Rafah is disastrous and too many civilians are starving and dying. Meantime, Israel argues the exact wording of the ruling doesn't force them to stop the operation because, in their estimation, no potential genocide is underway right now. Israel saying that it has not and will not carry out military activity that, quote, creates living conditions that could lead to the destruction of the Palestinian civilian population in whole or in part. It's unclear how this may change the IDF's operation in Rafah, if at all. The ICJ ruling is largely unenforceable. Still, it represents increasing isolation of Israel on the world stage. And tonight, the bodies of 3 additional hostages back in Israel after being recovered in Gaza. Israel saying the 3 were killed during the original Hamas attack on October 7th, but that their bodies were taken to Gaza. Israel says there are There are about 120 hostages still being held there, though a third of them are thought to be dead. This, as the Israeli military says, the tunnel that held the 4 bodies found last week in northern Gaza was built inside and underneath a home that was recently reconstructed with funds by UNRWA and Germany. UNRWA has not yet commented on the allegations, but in the case of similar claims made in the past, has said that they are largely unaware of tunnel networks and that it merits an independent inquiry that is currently not possible, given Gaza is an active war zone. With negotiations for hostage release and a ceasefire at an impasse right now, CIA Director William Burns is reportedly heading back to Europe to try and revive the talks. According to NBC News, Burns is set to hold a meeting with Israel's Mossad agency and also the Prime Minister of Qatar in the coming days.
In my experience,
one person has now been arrested after a shooting at Skyline High School's graduation ceremony in Oakland, California. This happening last night, and it injured 2 people. A man and a woman were hospitalized in stable condition. There may have been a third victim, but police could not confirm that. Several people have been detained, and authorities are looking for more suspects. And Hunter Biden was in court today for the last hearing before he stands trial on federal firearms charges in Delaware. The judge ruled on a number of issues relating to the evidence allowed during the trial. Biden is charged with lying about using drugs in 2018 on a form to buy a gun that he kept for less than 2 weeks. His lawyers argue he didn't break the law and the case is politically motivated. Jury selection is expected to begin on June 3rd. Non-U.S. citizens are allowed to vote in some local elections around the country, leading House Republicans to push legislation to ban that from happening. That measure passed with the help of 52 Democrats. National correspondent Janae Bowens has a look at what some say was a controversial vote.
Non-citizens voting in some local elections is further igniting the tensions over the crisis at the southern border.
Why is it in our country the only one dumb enough to offer incentives after incentive after incentive to the millions of illegal immigrants pouring over our border every single year?
In the House, the concerns are bipartisan, as 52 Democrats joined all Republicans in voting to repeal Washington, D.C.'s law allowing non-citizens to vote in local elections. That's 10 more Democrat votes compared to a similar measure last year, but many Democrats say the effort is to
meddle in local D.C. elections, disenfranchise Black and brown voters who are fully capable of governing themselves, by the way, and erode the trust of Americans in our federal elections.
The Immigration Reform Law Institute sued D.C. over the law, saying the right to govern is reserved for citizens, and said in a statement to the Daily Caller, the proponents of this law claim it gives citizens of foreign nations a voice in the affairs of the city they reside in, but they already have a voice protected by the First Amendment. Non-citizens can vote in certain municipalities in California, Maryland, and Vermont. Meanwhile, the Biden administration is looking to improve immigration processes by giving federal ID cards to migrants.
It is a further step towards legitimizing what has been an absolute travesty, 9 million illegals crossing this border just in the last 3 years.
When it comes to casting ballots, the Illegal Immigration Reform and Immigrant Responsibility Act of 1996 prohibits non-citizens from voting in federal elections. But proposed legislation to strengthen that law is making its way through the House. I'm Janae Bowens reporting for the National Desk.
Documentary filmmaker Morgan Spurlock, best known for his 2004 film Super Size Me, is dead at the age of 53. Spurlock's family said he died yesterday in New York from complications of cancer. His experiment in Super Size Me of eating only McDonald's for 30 days puts a spotlight on America's fast food industry. He made several other films covering topics like corporate power and the war on terror. Virginia Governor Glenn Youngkin signed legislation just this week prohibiting website owners from targeting targeted advertising of minors by using any personal data without the direct consent of their parents. This is just the latest in legislation protecting privacy of children online. While in New York, Governor Kathy Hochul eyes two pieces of legislation that would go further in protecting minors who use social media. The National Desk's Ashley Kusakanki is in New York with more.
For a while, I was struggling with my mental health and the pressures of being a student, and of course, being a victim of social media.
In 2023, Governor Hochul announced millions in funding to help expand school-based mental health clinics. It's been a success story for students like Mohannes High School's Mika Vasquez, who says the mental health clinic at her school has made a real impact for her and agrees something now needs to be done to alleviate the pressure of social media.
Kids all over the state should be safe on social media.
These addictive feeds govern the content that social media feeds up to them, but it has also now taken over their well-being.
In 2023, the United States Surgeon General reported adolescents who spend more than 3 hours per day on social media face double the risk of depression and anxiety.
This does not have to be the future for our children.
Two bills remain on the legislative floor for this year that the governor says could be the first steps to helping kids at home and in schools. The Stop Addictive Feeds exploitation would prohibit social media platforms from providing an addictive feed to children without parental consent. And the New York Child Data Protection Act would protect the privacy of children by restricting digital services from using personal data. When Governor Hochul was asked if kids should have access to cell phones with these platforms in schools, she said this.
No.
What role do you think the state?
This is something I have thought about for a long time. But I'm not going to dictate that here today. I'm going to have conversations with others, teachers, parents, and find out what's right for our students.
Coming up, flight delays and cancellations are increasing as we head into the Memorial Day weekend, where travel is busiest. Then the health impacts of untreated hearing loss that may surprise you. And later, an Oregon mother says a man attacked her while she was driving her kids home. The disturbing story of one road rage incident gone too far when we come back. The roads and skies crowded this evening, with travel volumes on track to surpass pre-pandemic levels during this Memorial Day weekend. Friday looking awfully busy after yesterday's air travel came close to breaking a record. Thursday was the second busiest day at airports in the United States ever. And TSA, it says it screened a whopping amount of passengers, 2.9 million passengers, ranking second only to the Sunday after Thanksgiving last year. TSA says 5 of its 10 busiest days were this month, a sign that travel is ramping up into the summer season. And no bigger sign of a holiday travel weekend than the delays at this hour for flights in, around, and out of the U.S. Over 5,100 flights delayed so far today, with more than 100 cancellations. Donald Trump's rally in New York has Democrats on defense. As national correspondent Matt Gelka tells us, the former president is trying to grab traditional blue voters, and polling shows it might be working.
Donald Trump rallied on traditionally Democratic turf in the Bronx, New York. The former president attempting to build on momentum with minority voters.
It doesn't matter whether you're black or brown or white or whatever the hell color you are, it doesn't matter. We are all Americans, and we're going to pull together as Americans.
Trump has been polling better than expected with black and Hispanic voters, 2 key blocks that have powered Democrats in the past.
A lot of people seem to identify with Trump and really want to be closer to him, to hear him speak.
New York's governor bashed his visit in an echo of when Hillary Clinton called Trump supporters deplorables.
Donald Trump to be the ringleader of and invite all his clowns to a place like the Bronx. New York will never, ever support Donald Trump for president.
Trump lost New York State by 23 points in 2020, but the inroads with voters Democrats rely on, especially in battleground states, aren't going unnoticed.
He was sued for refusing to rent his apartments to black families.
The Biden campaign released this ad ahead of Trump's Bronx rally, the accompanying tweet saying, "Let's remember, Trump is a lifelong racist." They released another ad last week also focusing on black voters.
Come on, Trump's our guy. He says he's the best guy ever for black America. Better than Barack Obama.
Better than Obama? Trump's the guy who told America Obama was born in Africa.
Trump met with New York construction workers in April during a break in his trial. The focus on the city encapsulating a voter realignment, with GOP voters becoming a little more working class and diverse, while Democrats are gaining more well-educated voters in the suburbs. While Democrats might not be too worried about losing the state of New York, they're on defense because even slight shifts of black and Hispanic voters over towards Donald Trump could be enough to sway the election. For the National Desk in Washington, I'm Matt Gelka.
More than 100 people are thought to be dead after a landslide buried a village in Papua New Guinea today. Emergency officials are responding, but a blocked road is making it very difficult. Australian media says the landslide hit the Enga province in the country's north. What caused it is still unclear.
There was a 4.5 earthquake in the area about 4 days ago, so that could have shaken things up a bit, opened up some cracks. If rain followed, you would possibly get the weakening, and then sometimes these landslides in those circumstances just happen like this one did overnight with seemingly no cause.
There's limited water in the affected area and power lines are down. Australia's government says it is ready to help. An American charged with possession of ammunition in Turks and Caicos is on his way back home after paying a $6,700 fine. Brian Hagerich won't have to serve time as long as he doesn't commit other crimes in the next year. Carrying guns or ammo on the islands usually has a 12-year sentence or higher. Hagerich's lawyer said he forgot the ammo was in his luggage. 4 other Americans are facing similar charges. One of them has a hearing on Tuesday. An ex-Marine pilot being held in Australia can now be extradited to the United States to face charges in the United States, a Sydney judge has ruled. 55-year-old Daniel Duggan is accused of illegally training Chinese aviators in Australia and has been under arrest since 2022. Duggan was working as a flight instructor and she says that he is being singled out for political posturing. Daniel Duggan immigrated to Australia in 2002 and waived his U.S. citizenship in 2012. Rapper Sean Diddy Combs now facing his 8th lawsuit since November, the latest one from April Lamprose, who says they met back in 1994 when she was studying at New York's Fashion Institute of Technology. In the lawsuit, Lamprose says Combs sexually assaulted her 4 times from the mid-90s to the early 2000s. She also accuses him of assault, battery, and other crimes. Combs has denied previous allegations. About 40 million people in this country have hearing loss. That's according to the CDC. And that's important to note because the latest research shows not treating it can have huge health implications, including an increased risk for dementia and a decreased life expectancy. Medical reporter Barbara Moore says that's the problem.
1 in 10 people who need hearing aids actually get help.
That used to be Renee Larole. About 10 years ago, she began noticing a difference in her hearing over time. She had to turn up her TV. Holding conversations became more challenging.
Couldn't quite understand what they were saying.
Last year, she came to Beltone, where they offer free hearing testing. As hearing care practitioner Samantha Elkus explains,
you know what you are hearing, but you don't know what you're not hearing.
Until hearing aids, the right ones, open that door. They did for Renee.
Everything is so much sharper, more clear.
For Renee, initially, cost was a hurdle. Then she found out her insurance would cover a portion of it. For others, another obstacle is what they look like, or at least used to look like.
They have gotten a lot smaller.
Some wonder, do they really work?
We have hearing aids that are 150% times better in noise situations than the ones that we had even 3 years ago.
Renee can now connect her hearing aids via Bluetooth to her phone and tune out the background noise, highlighting what she used to be missing.
When you have one of your senses taken away, it affects your mind.
Which is perhaps why research out of USC this year showed a life-extending benefit for regular hearing aid users.
It affects your quality of life, just how you're hearing your loved ones, relationships.
Hearing loss affects primarily older people, and Medicare doesn't cover it. But some supplemental plans will cover a portion, like Renee's. Many hearing aid companies like Beltone offer free testing, which is a good reason to get it done. I'm medical reporter Barbara Morse.
Coming up, students at a California high school get to work with experts from NASA on their class projects, the cutting-edge technology that's helping them learn right after this. We have reporters all across the country in your neighborhoods covering the issues that matter most to you. We're taking the pulse of America.
Teams of students from Shasta, Enterprise, and Foothill High Schools have been working on space exploration, designing landers and equipment to research distant worlds far from Earth. They hooked up electronically with the NASA Glenn Research Center in Ohio and the Applied Physics Lab, APL, in Maryland, to share their projects with the experts, who spent almost 2 hours with them. The classroom looked empty until you put on these HoloLenses, and the projects would appear for the students to explain how they would work.
Some engineering for the rover,
It has sample collection using a drill, and it will study the chemical analysis of the ice.
This class was designed to try to model as closely as possible to how NASA actually runs through a mission.
This mother of 2 children recalls terrifying moments when she drove along Murray Road during the height of rush hour in Beaverton last Friday.
I was heading home and got into a bit of a situation with this gentleman who felt like I cut him off, and he chased me. The area where he was kicking and punching my car was the back where my daughter was sitting, and she kept saying, "Oh my gosh, Mom, I felt it, I felt him."
The whole thing captured by these cameras on her Tesla. Images show the suspect police identified as 33-year-old Joseph Lee of Portland. He then allegedly pulled out a knife, but when police tracked Lee down, they found he was already in jail for charges related to another incident. Police responded and arrested Lee.
Just shocked as to what it was.
Kind of hard not to be, especially when you find something like this along a very remote Canton trail.
Once in a lifetime, you know, it don't happen every day.
But it did happen to Justin Klontz when he and a coworker found it. Burnt carbon fiber dotting the surface, heavy-duty pieces and plates of metal, held together with what look like thick bolts. Glamping Collective's owner plans on reaching out to aerospace experts to figure out what this thing is and where it came from. Until then, this just remains a mystery in the mountains.
Coming up, the latest as people in South Carolina search for a monkey that appears to be on the loose. We'll be right back. People in Colton County, South Carolina are searching for a monkey that appears to be on the loose right now. And you can see it in this video. If you get an up close look over there, looking like it's on some sort of shed. Looks to be a macaque, but it's hard to tell for sure. The county sheriff's office posted on X that it is aware of the situation. A detective advised people not to approach the monkey. Owning certain wild animals, if you can imagine it, as pets is allowed in South Carolina. So right now, deputies there trying to track this pet animal down and, of course, then return it to its rightful owner, rightful location. Hopefully they can do that. That does it for this edition of the National Desk. We do invite you to join us again this evening for more coverage of America's top stories. I'm Amira David. Thank you so much for watching and have a wonderful weekend.